At the beginning of the story, we meet a modest man named Henry, quietly working the night shift at a toll booth. His expression carried the weight of a colorless life, as though all spark had faded from him. Returning home in the early morning, his wife Debbie echoed the same concern. She told him he no longer seemed to love her. She reminded him how everything once felt so alive and different when his love was clear. As their conversation unfolded, a sudden, heavy knock echoed at the door. When Henry answered, he found his friend Eddie standing outside with a man named Joe who looked gravely unwell. Joe collapsed into fits of violent vomiting. Since Debbie was a nurse, she immediately brought him inside to tend to him. Then Eddie mentioned to Henry that his basketball team had a game that day. Since Joe was in no condition to play, Eddie insisted Henry take his place. Though Henry tried to decline, Eddie pushed a jersey onto him and dragged him along. On the way, Henry asked where the match was being held. Eddie assured him it wasn't far, only about 15 minutes away. A little later, Eddie asked Henry to pull the car over, saying they would be back soon after grabbing some food. He told Henry to wait in the driver's seat and keep the engine running. But as Eddie stepped away, he and two other men, strangers to Henry, pulled masks over their faces. Without hesitation, the three of them drew guns and stormed into a bank. Poor Henry still had no clue that Eddie and the others were actually there to rob the bank, and that he had unknowingly been cast as their getaway driver. The car itself was stolen, hotwired to start without keys. After a while, the masked men came sprinting out of the bank, scattering in different directions. At that moment, a security guard spotted Henry. Since he was dressed in the same kind of t-shirt as the robbers, the guard assumed he was part of the crew and detained him on the spot. Later, the police pressed Henry to identify his accomplices, but he truly only knew Eddie. Naive and loyal to a fault, Henry didn't even give Eddie's name, thinking, whatever he may have done, he's still my friend. Because of this misplaced loyalty, Henry was sentenced to 3 years in prison for an attempted bank robbery. The moment Henry entered prison, he was approached by Max, who spoke to him with unexpected kindness. The next morning at breakfast, Max shared his thoughts with him. He told Henry that every man in that place once carried dreams, but life's cruel turns had dragged them behind bars. Then Max asked Henry, "What's your dream?" Henry answered simply, "I don't have one." Hearing that, Max shook his head and said, "The greatest crime of all is living without a dream. So tell me, what do you wish for?" When Henry repeated his answer, Max quietly replied, "What's the point of living a life without dreams?" Time passed. 6 months later, Debbie came to visit Henry in prison. She told him she had something important to confess. She had fallen in love with another man. Instead of anger, Henry's gentle heart responded with grace. He told her it didn't matter, that all he wanted was her happiness. "If you can't live with me," he said, "then live with someone who makes you happy." Meanwhile, Max had come to accept prison as his true home. One day, the other inmates asked Max about the parole officer who had questioned him earlier. They said, "When the parole officer asked what you'd do if released, what was your reply?" Max smirked and said, "I told him I'd walk into his house, kill his dog, set his place on fire, and cut the tongue out of every living creature inside." Then Max turned to Henry and asked, "When are you getting out?" Henry quietly answered, "Next month." At this, another prisoner remarked that everyone believed Henry was a true gentleman. Henry repeated that he had never committed a crime. But Max told him, "You've been in here, so no matter what you say, people outside will still think you're guilty." Soon Henry was freed. The very first place he went was to see Debbie. But when the door opened, it was Joe standing there, and Henry's heart sank. Debbie appeared behind him, visibly pregnant with Joe's child. The sight made Henry realize how drastically his world had changed. Debbie gathered Henry's old belongings and asked what he planned to do now. Henry gave no reply. Then Joe stepped forward and offered Henry a business proposal. After Joe thanked Henry for not naming him in court, Henry replied, "I don't even know your name," and walked away without another word. He later found himself standing in front of the same bank where everything had begun. In that moment, a car struck him and he went down. The driver, a woman named Julie, hurried out and asked if he was all right. A nearby bank guard told her to call an ambulance, but Henry refused medical help. The guards helped him up and led him to a nearby cafe. Julie followed them inside. Henry told her, "I feel like I've seen you before." Julie answered, "Don't stare, just watch your step," and then she left. While in the cafe restroom, Henry's eyes fell on an old newspaper clipping pinned to the wall, an 80-year-old account of a bank heist. The article described how the robbery had been executed through an underground tunnel beneath the theater behind the bank, a tunnel that ran straight under the bank vault. With that discovery, Henry went straight back to the prison to find Max and announced, "I've found my dream. I want to rob the bank that put me here. If I must serve time, then at least let me steal for real." Max stared at him, unable to grasp what Henry meant. Henry asked Max directly, "Will you help me rob the bank?" Max raised an eyebrow and replied, "Do you even have a plan, or are you just wandering aimlessly?" Henry answered with quiet confidence, "Don't worry. I've got a first-class plan." After that, Henry went to the theater where Julie was rehearsing for her play. During the performance, her director berated her harshly, telling her she wasn't fit for the role. Frustrated and disheartened, Julie left for a coffee break. As she walked out, she noticed Henry nearby and asked if he was following her. Henry denied it, though he still trailed her to the cafe. Over coffee, Henry complimented her acting skills. Julie, in turn, thanked him for not making an issue out of the car accident. Meanwhile, back in prison, Max submitted another request for parole. After answering a few questions, Max was freed. Henry had already coached him on how to act in front of the officers. When Henry arrived to collect him outside the prison, Max asked, "Where's your car?" Henry admitted, "I don't have a car." In truth, he had walked there. Max snapped, "Because of which madman did I get released? Take me back, I don't want to be out." But when Henry revealed his plan, Max froze. "You're saying this is your idea? The same way they robbed the bank 80 years ago? Do you even have weapons?" Henry shook his head. "I don't have any gun. I don't want to hurt anyone." At this, Max replied with sarcasm, "Very noble of you. But after all these years, the bank may have shifted the vault. What if it's no longer above the tunnel? We'll need to make sure." So they went to the bank, where they met with the assistant manager. As they walked in, the guard kept a sharp eye on them. During the conversation, Max skillfully steered the discussion and managed to confirm that the vault had never been moved from its original position since the bank was first built. He did it so smoothly that the manager suspected nothing. Still, the guard continued watching them closely. After that, they made their way to the theater to inspect the tunnel. When Julie saw Henry there again, she was taken aback, but Max quickly stepped in. "When I was younger, I acted in many plays here," he explained. "I brought Henry along to show him the place. Would you mind if I had a look around inside?" As they entered, Julie asked Max which plays he had performed in. Without hesitation, he mentioned Shakespeare. Then he added, "I have so many memories tied to this theater. I'd like to revisit every corner." With that excuse, he secured permission to explore. While Max wandered off, Julie turned to Henry and asked if Max was his father. Henry shook his head and said, "No, he's just a good friend." Meanwhile, one of the theater staff guided Max through the building, eventually bringing him to the door of the tunnel. Max began examining it closely. Meanwhile, when Julie asked Henry what he did for a living, he answered plainly that he had just been released from prison and wasn't working at the moment. Julie was stunned. "Prison? Why? Did you kill someone?" she asked. Henry shook his head. "It's a long story. I'll tell you another time." After that, the two decided to meet for dinner that evening. Back at home, Max explained to Henry that the tunnel cut through the wall of the green room in the theater, which meant they needed to secure that space at any cost. But Henry seemed more concerned about preparing for his dinner with Julie. He asked Max how he looked. Max chuckled and said, "You're looking your best as always. Go on, enjoy your date. We'll work out the plan later." Max casually admitted that he had taken many lives. Later, on their way to the theater, Julie and Henry came up with an idea. Why not hold auditions there? That way they could spend more time inside the building. Before long, Max suggested another plan. "Why don't we get rid of the actor who uses the green room and give that role to Henry? Then we'll have all the time we need to dig and no one will suspect a thing." Henry hesitated, "But I don't know anything about acting." Max grinned and encouraged him. "Just look at your face, you're a born actor. No one can play it better than you, and besides, it's the lead role." Soon afterward, that actor suddenly left the play, claiming he'd been offered a big movie. In truth, Max had tricked him into quitting. When Julie discovered this, she was furious. "Will you people only stop once my career is destroyed?" she snapped. Despite all this, Henry gave the audition, and to everyone's surprise, he was selected. Now their work inside the theater would become much easier. But within a day or two they realized the tunneling was too much for just two people, so they decided to rope Joe into the plan. After plenty of persuasion, Joe agreed. When he saw the tunnel, he scoffed. Why go through all this trouble? Just grab a gun and hit the bank directly. Max snapped back. We're not going to rob it like amateurs. Slowly the digging progressed. Alongside the excavation, Henry began to commit to his acting role, taking it more seriously than anyone expected. He no longer wanted only money, he wanted something different from his life. One night, as Henry walked home after work, the same bank guard who had arrested him months before stopped him. The guard said, "You were with those robbers and now I keep seeing you at the theater behind the bank. I won't let anything happen this time." Henry invited the guard to get in and drove them to a quiet spot. When he asked what the man wanted, the guard explained, "Once a month the truck collects cash from our partner banks. At that time the vault holds more than $10 million. Only a fool would try to hit the bank at any other hour. I can be your inside man. I know the alarm system and I can help." The next day, during Julie's crying scene at the theater, the director snapped at her. "Stop milking it. Your tears need to mean something, not just be there for show." The director scolded Julie. "You've never loved anyone, have you? Your heart's never been broken. That's the problem. Without that feeling, you'll never become a true actress." During the break, Julie went to the bathroom and started crying. Henry followed and gently asked if she was all right. Through tears, Julie admitted, "It's true, I've never loved anyone. What should I do? But I want to be an actress." "You do love me. You just don't realize it yet. And I know you'll become a great actress." The two of them kissed. That night, while Henry and Max were going over the robbery plans, there was a knock at the door. When Henry opened it, Joe and Eddie were standing there. Eddie announced, "Joe told me everything and now I'm part of your plan too." Max instantly disliked him. He turned to Henry and asked, "Who is this clown?" Eddie shot back, "I already know all about it, so you've got no choice now." Annoyed, Eddie snapped, "I'm in the plan and you're out, old man." This time Max lost his patience and lunged at Eddie, ready to strike. Henry rushed in and managed to break up the fight before it got worse. The following day, Max and Henry went to the theater, only to learn that their play would be closing in just a few days. They both sank into worry. Henry murmured, "I don't think we'll be able to rob the bank now." In truth, he'd fallen for Julie as well. He understood they would have to pull the job and flee afterward, but the thought of leaving Julie tore at him. Max snapped back in anger, "I hauled you out of prison to help you and now you're backing out. I've spent my life talking, locked up for years. Now that I'm free, I'm going to do what I said I would. Commit a crime." That night Henry met Julie and told her, "We'll hit the bank on the first night of the show. After that I'll run off to California. You should go to Hollywood and chase your career. You'll meet me there, won't you?" Henry asked. But Julie exploded in anger. "If you were planning to leave, why did you make me believe in love? You only used me to get into the theater. I won't meet you anywhere. It's my mistake that I fell for a thief." Finally, the day of the big show arrived, the same day as the planned bank robbery. The director rallied the actors, saying, "This is your moment. Go out there and leave your mark. We have only 10 minutes before curtain." At that very moment, the cash truck pulled up to the bank just as the guard had described. Henry stayed on stage, performing his part. Everything was unfolding exactly as planned. First, they smashed through the brick wall with their tools. Then Joe used a welding torch to slice into the iron vault, carving out a large opening. At the same time, Max, following the guard's signal, had already cut the wires, silencing the alarm system. But suddenly Eddie turned on them. He aimed his gun at Max and ordered him to move aside. Then he barked at Joe to start loading all the cash into the car. Joe bristled at Eddie's betrayal and said, "Don't do this, brother. This isn't right." At that moment, Henry appeared. Eddie tried to intimidate him as well and even struck Max with the gun, sending him crashing to the ground. Joe pleaded with him to stop, but Eddie refused to listen. Finally, Max wrestled the gun out of Eddie's hands and began striking him with it. In the struggle, a shot went off, grazing Henry's leg. Despite the pain, Henry realized his cue in the play was moments away. Limping badly, he rushed onto the stage to perform his scene. After subduing Eddie, Max tied him up and then he, Henry, and Joe fled with the bags of money. Suddenly, Henry told them to stop the car. Joe and Max were baffled. Henry insisted they leave without him, promising he'd catch up later. When Joe asked where Henry had gone, Max muttered, "Forget him. Let him go to hell. Just drive. Meanwhile, Henry dragged himself back to the theater where Julie was still performing. Limping onto the stage, he declared to her in front of the audience, "I can't go away from you. I truly love you and I can't live without you," Henry confessed. By coincidence, the play at that very moment had a similar scene. The audience believed it was all part of the performance and watched in awe, eagerly waiting for Julie's reply. The director dimmed the lights and urged her to say yes. After a long silence, Julie finally understood that Henry's love was real. She didn't answer with words, but her expression said it all. And so, in the end, the hero won both the heroine and the money. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.